moving on, we take a look at the boom in agri-tech investment. Agri-tech has become more important after the impact COVID-19 has had on the global food supply chain. Moderating the panel on this topic is Tamara Singh, head of Asia Pacific at Official Monetary and Financial Institutions Forum. She will be joined by Sunny George Verghese, co-founder and Group Chief Executive Officer at Olam International Limited, and Dina Umali-Deininger, Agriculture Practice Manager, Sustainable Development, Africa Region at the World Bank. Let's now join Tamara and her panel of agri-tech experts to learn more about investment trends in this industry.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome. The Official Monetary and Financial Institutions Forum is an independent think tank for central bankers, economic policy and public investment decision makers, providing a neutral platform. With teams around the world, we focus on global policy and investment themes. This year, we have also extended our focus to digital currencies and sustainability policy. Our core membership are global public investors with investable assets of around $40 trillion, and they are the heart of our network. Also close to us are our stakeholders. Sunny George Verghese is joining us today, co-founder and group CEO of Olam International Limited. Olam operates in 70 countries, delivering 47 products to more than 16,000 customers in 70 markets, employing around 26,000 people worldwide. Under Sunny's leadership, Olam has gone from strength to strength, recently investing in Olam Direct, a digital initiative that disintermediates complex agricultural supply chains and directly reaches smallholder farmers. We also have Dina Umali-Deininger, the World Bank Practice Manager for Agriculture and Food Global Practice, East Asia and the Pacific. The World Bank is a leading financier of agriculture globally. In Southeast Asia, for example, the bank has strengthened Indonesia's agricultural research systems, creating capacity for local development of improved rice, vegetable, and fruit varieties. Prior to turning her attention to East Asia and the Pacific, Dina had focused on the Africas, as well as Europe and Central Asia regions for the World Bank. Welcome to you both, and thank you for joining us today. To start us off, I'd like to ask you both to just share your views on the role of agri-tech in ensuring ecosystem sustainability across the globe. If we could perhaps open with the World Bank. Dina, would you like to share your views, please?
Thank you, Tamara, and good afternoon to everybody. When we look at agriculture and food systems, it's really important to look at it from three perspectives in terms of a healthy economy, healthy environment, and a healthy people. Now, when we talk about a healthy economy, the world's population is expected to grow to 10 billion people by 2050. And to feed all these people, we need to produce 56% more food than we do today. So this will require huge investments to make our farms and food systems more productive to meet this demand. So all this means is that agriculture is really going to be a very lucrative business in the future. And in Southeast Asia, it's been estimated that agri-food markets will reach $1 trillion by 2030. However, we really have to focus also on a healthy planet and how we produce our food. Because in the past decades, what's happened is we produce more, but this is leading to deterioration of our natural resource base. So we now have problems of soil degradation, water pollution, groundwater depletion, and this has been aggravated by climate change, and this is going to undercut our production capabilities for the future. Now, these are big issues now in China and Vietnam, the powerhouses for agriculture in East Asia. And we also need to look at the issue of healthy people. We need to produce also diverse and safe foods that are affordable and available for a healthy diet. Now, many governments in East Asia still focus on rice and not enough on diversifying production to fruits, vegetables, livestock, fish, and other products. And as a result, they tend to be very expensive and not necessarily available. And moreover, about 1/3 of this production is lost through inefficiencies in the logistics systems, and further increases the cost of perishable foods. So agri-tech is going to be very critical in addressing all these three elements And we really needed to bring agriculture from where we are today to what I call agriculture 4.0 in the future. And this can be everything from precision agriculture, e-extension, mobile money, digital traceability systems for food safety. So there are many opportunities that we can really go on, and Agritech is going to be very important for that. Thank you.
Sunny, I know that you've got strong views about the inefficiencies in logistics. I'd love to hear from you and how you see the role of Agritech in ensuring ecosystem sustainability.
Thank you, Tamara. I think that Dina has very articulately outlined what the challenge for us is in the food and agricultural system. How do we meet the growing demands of a population that's estimated to be 9.5, 9.7 billion people by 2050 without destroying the planet? And the global food and agricultural system, unfortunately, today is broken, as you saw some of the data points that Dina had shared with us. We account for 25% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. And if you take the third of the food loss that Dina referred to, that's another 6% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. So the agricultural sector accounts for 31% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. And in the first major developmental challenge that we are facing as humanity this century is the climate emergency. The agricultural and food system accounts for a big piece of chunk of it. We are also responsible for 71% of the world's freshwater withdrawals. And one of the most scarce constraints in terms of resources is really water. So how do we maximize crop per drop of water or improve water usage efficiency since we account for 71% of the world's freshwater withdrawals? The second big global challenge that we face, apart from climate emergency, is the collapse of nature and biodiversity. And agriculture alone accounts for 75% of the world's biodiversity loss or biodiversity collapse. So we have a huge direct responsibility in making sure that we are able to produce nature-friendly food and agricultural production. The third issue is that there are a lot of ecosystem benefits that agriculture and food production systems derive from nature to produce the food, feed, and fiber that we consume. And most of this is not priced or costed. This is the cost of externalities. And this is because Mother Nature's back office is not set up. It is not issuing us those invoices. So we assume they are free. A study done by True Cost says that to just produce the 4 major world food crops and 4 major protein items, the total annual externalities cost of what we derive from nature free to produce that and consume that is almost $3 trillion annually. And if you look at the global financial crisis in 2008-9, the financial loss that the world faced was $2.7 billion. 10 years after the event, we still remember the great global financial crisis. But right under our noses, every year, the invisible cost of nature, just to produce 4 major food crops and 4 major protein items, $3 trillion on an annual basis, which we don't even begin to recognize. So if we have to meet the challenge of feeding or providing food, feed, and fiber to a growing population without destroying the planet, climate-friendly, nature-friendly, and also being optimizing for all the social issues. Today, there are 525 million smallholder farmers around the world. They support more than 2.2 billion people out of the 7.5 billion people that the world has today in agriculture. Now, if you look at this 525 million smallholder farmers, about 55% of them are about 40% below the monetary line, poverty line definition of $1.90 a day. Another 35% are at or below that poverty line of $1.90 a day. The living income is 3 times that number. So we have a huge challenge of making farming systems, particularly smallholder farming systems, more prosperous. So how do you get to deforestation free? How do we get to child labor free? Child labor is a big issue. 2/3 of the world's child labor, 260 million children employed in child labor practices around the world, 2/3 of that is in agriculture. How do we get them back to schools, right? What are the underlying root causes that is resulting in such an overwhelming proportion of children engaged in child labor in agricultural supply chains? The only way we can get out of this box is to use technology, right? So technology is to be a big, big driver. We can, as we go through this panel, surface and share some experiences of how we are using technology to address and solve for some of these issues?
I think we should. Those are such complex issues that don't just apply in one area of the world or more than any others. However, having said that, I would like to ask one question to make it a little bit more regionally specific, thinking about the theme of this conversation, which is the investment boom in Southeast Asia in particular. And one of the challenges I've always observed is how in Southeast Asia, the problem manifests a little bit differently. I'd love to hear, perhaps from the World Bank first, what it is that makes Southeast Asia a more challenging environment for investing in agritech.
Okay, thanks. So I think one of the challenges we face in Southeast Asia, which Sunny has also mentioned, is that we have millions of farmers, millions of small farmers in the region. Actually, FAO made an estimate that even in China, 80% of the food value produced is produced by small farmers, and the same thing in the rest of Asia. And so the challenge then is because they're so small, they're really not attractive for a lot of our agribusiness off-takers, because you don't want to deal with so many small farmers that's farming 1.5 hectares of land each. And so the question is, how do we then aggregate them into like producer groups, producer associations, so that they are able to become more attractive as a source of supply? I think the second is that also the continued perceived higher risk that investors feel about agriculture, in the sense that unlike manufacturing, where you have uncertainty in terms of production, you have a lot more uncertainty in agriculture in terms of supply, because you're also subject to climate risk, floods, droughts, cyclones. So there's also an urgent need to bring more risk management instruments and to make agriculture more climate resilient. You have drought-resistant crops, drought-resistant varieties, flood-resistant rice. How do we bring that so that it also reduces the risk? And I think thirdly, from the sector, I think it's also digital literacy. I think there's it's a big hurdle to get our small farmers to be comfortable using digital technologies, and also for the governments, issues about data governance in terms of data privacy, data ownership, and data security. So it's really a whole range of issues. Thank you.
And those are, I'm sure, very close to Sunny's heart, as having, I'm sure, Sunny thought very hard about the off-taker challenges, weather, and that resiliency. Would you like to add your views on Southeast Asia's differentiators?
Yeah, so out of the 525 million smallholder farmers, 19%, about 100 million smallholder farmers, are in Southeast Asia. Average landholding of about 0.6 hectares per farmer. So it's very small scale. The second defining feature in Southeast Asia is it's a very till-intensive and input-intensive method of farming. So as you know, globally, we use about 25 billion tons of topsoil each year. And according to the FAO, that means if you continue at this pace, we have only 60 good harvests left, because we would have got all of the topsoil eroded with all of the organic matter, the nutrient layer that is there in the topsoil. Southeast Asia is particularly input-intensive and till-intensive, which means it has got very poor soil health, and that needs to be remedied or corrected. So that is the second issue that you're facing. But Southeast Asia is also a very large producer and exporter of some of the major crops. So the two of the world's largest rice exporters are Vietnam and Thailand. Malaysia and Indonesia put together account for more than 90% of world's palm oil production and palm oil exports. It's a very significant producer, third largest producer of cocoa, very large producer of coffee, very large producer of sugar, and many other fruits and vegetables as well. So it is important both from a domestic supply of food to be self-reliant within Southeast Asia, but it has got some of these fundamental ecosystem challenges that need to be addressed. And then, of course, there's the social issues of being below the poverty line. Many of the farmers in Southeast Asia, apart from the large plantation crop scenarios, in smallholder farming situations, they're well below the poverty line. And as a result of that, there is a compounding impact of being deprived of access to good education or access to jobs or micronutrient deficiencies in their feed and diet plans or diets. which makes it even more harder for them to be productive in the workforce. So there are some fundamental issues that need to be addressed, and therefore moving to a regenerative agricultural system in Southeast Asia would be at the heart and crux of transforming Southeast Asian agriculture.
And so, Sunny, I guess, from a practitioner's perspective, you've had to face up to some of these real challenges, just to make your business continue in a sustainable fashion. And with regards to implementing something like Olam Direct, would you like to share a bit about how Olam has thought about these challenges and the approaches you've taken?
Yeah, I think the first foundational building block to try and digitize our supply chains end to end is to have a proper farmer information system. So we have something called the Olam Farmer Information System. About 537,000 farmers out of our 5 million farmers from whom we source are now directly registered on the Olam Farmer Information System and provide social data that helps us assess what they require and how to provide that service or support to them. This 537,000 farmers, we have all of the history in terms of the number of people in the household, their educational qualifications, where is the next most proximate school for them, what are the crops they grow, what are the varieties they grow, what are their agricultural practices. All of the data and information we have, we geotag these farmers. So we know exactly where those farmers are and whether they're moving from one location to another to increase their acreage, whether they're getting into state reserves or forest national parks. So all of that information we have through the Olam Farmer Information System. That wouldn't have been possible but for applying digital technologies at scale to build that backbone and that foundation. The second pillar is that we have a whole series of supplier digital engagement programs. And we start first with Olam Direct, what you mentioned, of trying to directly source from smallholder farmers. As I mentioned, 525 million smallholder farmers. So it's a very, very fragmented production system. It is very difficult to reach them. And that is why the agricultural supply chain and smallholder farming systems have many layers of intermediaries through whom the raw materials or produce or harvest actually passes. And that means the farmer gets an increasingly lower proportion of the FOB value because a lot of the margins go to the intermediaries in the supply chain. Olam Direct was basically to transfer value to the farmer by directly linking the farmer to the customer through a digitally enabled Olam Direct system where we get micro leads and farm leads to work directly with the farmers and collect the produce from the farmers and bring it to Olam depot or a warehouse so that there's a direct linkage between the farmer and Olam. That is just one of the interventions. I would probably just like to highlight a couple of very quick interventions, or we can take it down the road if you want to move on to Dina. We can take some of the specific examples down the road.
Perhaps you could hear one or two for the time.
So the first is we are launching a offering called Jiba. Jiba is a farmer services platform. So it's a smart farming platform to transform the livelihoods of smallholder farmers. So we provide because right now smallholder farmer smartphone penetration, if you take Indonesia, India, Nigeria, Brazil, and some of the major emerging markets have now this year reached almost 80% smartphone penetration. So we have developed a machine learning enabled agronomy nudge brain, which offers the farmer through an intuitive farmer facing app, the next best action that he should take on his farm on that particular day. So this is highly contextualized, personalized, consumable information driven by a machine learning algorithm based on 52 production factors. So this is not generic advice we give to the farmer. By understanding the farmer's soil type, the variety he grows, the location where his farm is located, every day he will get a nudge as to the next best action he can take on the farm to catalyze farm productivity and farm incomes. So, and in addition to providing him that agronomic advice and crop care advice, we also provide him inputs, we provide him access to finance, we provide off-take platform for him to sell the produce directly to us or to end customers, and therefore we transfer it a larger value. So we're trialing it in the corn supply chain in Sulawesi in Indonesia, and we believe that the farmer can get about $80 improved income per hectare in corn if he takes 2 crops of corn as a result of these 4 services that we provide the farmer. So this is one example of how we are using technology to transform rural farmer livelihoods. Our objective is to try and get these farmers to a living income from being below the poverty line today.
That is quite amazing. And you can tell that it's a long-term investment that you've been investing in over time. Just to accumulate the information and have it ready to deploy would have been incredibly complex. One of the challenges you haven't yet touched on, and if you wouldn't mind, just very quickly, I'd love to hear how you went about convincing the farmers to try.
So the hook for the farmer is, does he have to pay for this service? The farmer currently has economics on his farm that he cannot pay for any of these services. Mm-hmm. So how do you get the farmer and persuade or induce him to come onto your platform? So what is the hook that you're going to provide for the farmer to come on? And that hook is if he sees that by being on that platform, he's going to transform his livelihoods or get significantly enhanced productivity and income, and his whole farming operation is simplified, more reliable, less risky, less exposed to the various agricultural risks. The moment the farmer begins to see that value, then he is hooked onto the platform. And then you can provide him other services as well. So trying to make the money off the farmer, the monetization model is not to make the money off the farmer. The monetization model is to get farmers coming onto your platform and using your platform because it transforms their livelihoods, raises their incomes, and as a result of which and also upgrades them in terms of regenerative agricultural practices, personalized, consumable, next best actions that they need to take on the farm. So they're continuously learning, mastering the skill of becoming better farmers and more climate resilient farmers. So really, that is a challenge. The first challenge that we had was when we thought of this a few years ago, smartphone penetration in rural areas was quite limited. So it was 30, 40%. Now it is almost 80%. So now you can employ these digital technologies at scale. Because then the second big challenge that we faced was the farmers were not very literate in many of these countries. Mm-hmm. They had no patience to read anything, and they don't really consume information or knowledge by reading. So we had to put in a video brain and a voice brain. So all the next best action steps that we communicate to the farmer is through a video brain and a voice brain in that local dialect or that local language, so that the farmer can easily consume that information. He's not going to be able to consume it otherwise. And the video brain also allows us to have the farmer snap a photograph of his crop, and we can identify the pest and immediately tell him what interventions he should take, what is this pest and what should he do about it. So
that's really quite amazing.
Technology challenge, penetration in terms of smartphones, and then addressing the hook, providing him a clear hook to be on that platform is really the 2 key things that we need to solve for.
And with over 500,000 farmers on, it sounds like you're getting quite far progressed in solving for it. So on to Dina then, thinking about the work the World Bank does around creating scale, what are the challenges you faced while we've been trying to do that?
Okay, so from our side, the challenge we face is really in terms of helping to create or addressing the issues of the enabling environment. Because in many areas where we're trying to promote agriculture development, you don't have farm-to-market roads, you don't have irrigation systems. And so the question is, how do you promote the investments in these types of physical infrastructure? In other cases, it's really also lack of weak services. Farmers don't know what the prices are when they sell their produce, or where they're going to get their inputs, or to try and even access credit. And so if you are not even able to have money to buy your inputs, then it's going to be very difficult to really make your production really succeed. So at the World Bank, and this is an area where we try to do more in terms of, I said, the enabling environment, whether it's a regulation that's preventing an enterprise to operate. In some countries, the governments even are responsible for distributing seeds and fertilizer, and therefore it sort of discourages private enterprises to come in. And so in some countries, we are actually asking the government and dialogue to switch to switch from physical distribution to giving the resources to the farmers, for example, through an e-voucher that they can use to buy the fertilizer or buy the seeds themselves in whatever form they need. So, because sometimes the government delivers fertilizer, it's the wrong kind at the wrong time. So switching to different kinds of mechanisms to be able to access these inputs. And even, I think, in many countries now, there's the issue of aging a farming population. And there are no young people willing to come back to agriculture. And so the question is, what are innovative ways that you can promote mechanization? And in other countries, for example, in South Asia, in Nigeria, they're now doing Uber tractors, wherein you have a machine service company, you dial in on your cell phone, request for a tractor to come and plow your field at a certain time. I mean, these are the kinds of, I believe, enterprises that young people will even be willing to venture into to address some of these constraints that are being faced in the agriculture.
I think from what you've both said in the last few minutes, it's quite clear that there is a harmony between the work of the private enterprise and the public organizations in together addressing the need to ensure food sustainability in a sustainable fashion. What I'd quite like to hear, actually, from perhaps Olam quickly, what drove your decision to become quite so hands-on and to go to the smallholder farmers and to drive these changes? Because that's quite a large investment decision, as we've touched on.
The starting point, Tamara, is that it is aligned to our purpose. Our purpose, the problem that we're trying to solve, the reason why we come to work every day, is we believe we have to reimagine global food and agricultural systems, which means how do we produce more food, feed, and fiber to feed a growing population without destroying the planet or with far less resource intensity than we currently have. And we have three specific outcomes that we want to generate. We want to make farmers and farming systems more prosperous. We want to build thriving rural communities. And we want to regenerate the living world in terms of regeneration. So those are the three outcomes that we want to generate. So our move towards having sustainability-driven and digitally-driven solutions to achieve this purpose is really what has driven us and taken us to all of these things. And we believe there are 5 levels of change that we need to achieve. One is we got to get people to change individually. Only 5 or 6% of the world's population have what we call naturalistic or environmental intelligence, one of the 8 intelligences. 95% of us, unfortunately, are not blessed with that intelligence. So 5% of the world gets it. Many of us, including me, we don't get it, right? So how do we get the 95% of the population who do not have the natural intelligence to become more aware of the environment or to become more aware of social issues and sustainability issues? So we need to change at the individual level. To change at the individual level, we have launched something called a Sustainability Lifestyle App, AdBar, which if you wake up in the morning, you have breakfast, you click the breakfast, a photograph of the breakfast, you will get what your water footprint is, carbon footprint is, waste footprint is. Then you decide to come to the office, you decide to bike to the office or take a car to the office or the MRT to the office, it'll tell you what your footprint is. If you take a flight to KL or New York, then it'll tell you what the footprint is. So it maps what your footprint is, and then it provides you, through gamification, a set of behaviors that it can reinforce that allows you to reduce or mitigate that footprint. And then the third thing it does is, whatever you can't mitigate and reduce, we offer you solutions to offset it. So we want to first change individual behavior. We got 89,000 employees in Olam, which means if they have on average 4 or 5 people to their household, that's a lot of people. We cannot change the world if we can't change ourselves first. Secondly, we need to change Olam as a company. Third, we need to change the sector, the ag sector. Fourth, we need to work with civil society. We need to advocate for government policy to make sure that private sectors pivots to becoming more sustainable. Only when we have all of these changes happen concurrently can you really meet our purpose of reimagining global food and agricultural systems. So we have initiatives in each of these 5 levels of change, concrete, specific, granular initiatives that we are executing to achieve our purpose or our mission.
Thank you, Sunny. Dina, I think I'd love to hear from the World Bank, as you encourage private organizations to take on more and to facilitate that public-private partnership, what is the one message you'd want to give to private organizations thinking about doing, their first Agtech experiment?
Okay. I think that it's really important to look at the opportunity. Because right now in Asia, there are already 5.8 billion people who are mobile subscribers. So how can the private sector take advantage of this opportunity and develop new instruments, new apps, new technologies that can also be used by small farmers? Because right now, I think agriculture is the least digitized of all sectors. And so the question is, how can we entice them to really think about innovative innovative options that can be applied to agriculture, whether it be precision agriculture, e-extension, mobile systems. In other countries, there are many innovative entrepreneurs that are already, for example, providing services to livestock farmers through a mobile app where the farmers can log in to say, I need a veterinarian to come and see me, or I need an extension agent to come and see me, or I need fertilizer and seeds. How do we make it a marketplace that can then be of most use to the small farmers? Because oftentimes a lot of these technologies are only tailored to the big, commercial, large farm, but not so much for the smaller farmers. And I think in the World Bank and other development partners, we're also working in this area to set up like an incubation hub, or linking these new entrepreneurs to our producer organizations so that they can have a ready market. And so I think these are some of the ways I think that we can really bring this public-private partnership. And again, it's also for the government to be more welcoming in terms of, for example, in the times of, many governments are now setting up farmer registries with a lot of information on farmers, what they need, what they grow. And so how do we then also make this open to a lot of private entrepreneurs who can also use this data? But we do need to look at data privacy, data security, and all these other issues. But I think this is an area where all these data platforms that are being created, we can do more. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dina, and thank you very much, Sunny, for your insights today and for your openness. I hope we can continue the conversation. For now, I think we're turning back to the FinTech Festival main stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara, for leading that interesting discussion on agri-tech investment with Sunny of Olam International Limited and Dina from the World Bank.